Hi, everybody, and welcome to the FlawedCast. It's your host, Jay. I'm here today with Ally Jewell, Residence Manager at Carleton University. Ally, would you like to give us a brief introduction as to who you are?
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Jay. So my name is Ally, as Jay mentioned, and I'm just your average 27-year-old human. I'm living my best life here at Carleton. I am very passionate about rock climbing and the outdoors, and I'm just here today to kind of chat about some of the different struggles that I've faced and things that have gone on in my life, but also how it's gotten me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's amazing. And now I know that I met you personally in the role at the University of Waterloo, where we were both dons. So we were basically student staff living in the student residence there at the university, and helping others sort of with their transition into post-secondary life and things. And it came across to me that I had a fairly positive impression of you. You were literally like the first person to welcome me into the school, and I'll never forget you inviting me out to Molly Bloom's Irish pub and just having like a get to know each other, which was something that I thought was kind of amazing. And I think since that time, you sort of stuck around in my mind as like a very positive individual who is just like very uplifting and supportive of people. And so I've always strove to kind of like emulate your work and the way that you interact with people, because I think there's a really good methodology there that you use. But I know just through getting to know you that there have also been some personal struggles and things in life. And what really inspired me to get in touch with you today in order to talk on this sort of podcast is like, I consider you a very like professionally like successful individual who has managed to accomplish all these amazing things and touch all of these people on the way in like such a positive way. And yet I know that you've dealt with some very like real issues in your life, and a lot of people might have been discouraged to continue or found those things overwhelming. So I was hoping you could kind of share a little bit about your experience and what led you, throughout life to where you are now.
100%. Thank you so much for that. That was incredibly sweet. I'm like feeling the feels. But no, 100%. And I think an important, almost kind of like framing thing for all of this is the fact that like I think that I'm generally regarded as a very positive person, and in some ways almost looked at in like a naively positive kind of a way. And so that's why it's also really important for me that we get a chance to kind of chat about the fact that like maybe everything hasn't been sunshine and rainbows all along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that there definitely have been struggles, and that's definitely been something that has plagued me along the way. Especially I think when we were first meeting and like spending that time together and working as dons, that was a time in my life when I was really struggling, especially with like eating disorders and disordered eating, which presented a lot of challenges. And I don't know if that was something that I revealed to everyone or if that was evident, but yeah, that was a really hard part of that time in my life.
I remember you telling me about like getting up really early in the morning and going for these like extended runs, and like, it was always something I was like, oh, that sounds like a really like healthy way of life, and like I should probably get involved in that. But there's also no way in the world I'm getting up that early in the morning. But
choice.
Now that I'm looking back on it, like I don't even know if that necessarily was what you would consider like a healthy behavior in your life, or if that was like part of the symptoms of struggling with like an eating disorder and things.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that there was a lot along the way there where I told myself and I told other people that they were all positive things, right? Like, oh, I ate incredibly healthy, or I exercised a lot, and all of that, which now it's kind of reached a point in my life where I've been able to balance those things. But especially through undergrad, those were all things that I was not doing in a way that was helpful to my body. Like especially in first year, I would like not sleep at all because I'd be up and studying, and I'd still wake up incredibly early to like go to the gym, because if I didn't, then I just got so anxious and like my mood was impacted. And it just like I didn't function normally. But I still and then I was telling myself that I needed to do that to be able to function. But looking back, I think it was just really actually causing a lot of damage along the way. And just trying to be a student and trying to have a social life and exist with other people, while also trying to like always count calories and trying to also like always be aware of that stuff, is like like a huge mental load for sure.
I can only imagine because like I've had quite an interest. Well, I don't know if it's interesting. I find it interesting that I've had a fitness journey in my life just because there's been, a ton of issues surrounding that, and I would say 50% of me doesn't function in a way that I'm happy with. It is literally the right side. You could divide me down in the middle, and like left would be like we're in great working order, and right would be like this is the shattered remains of a husk of a person. So, there's been a lot of challenges with that, but even so, like I've tried to do things where it's like, oh, you're on like a specific sort of food diet and like you need to like count your calories and weigh your food to determine what's going into it to make sure that you're getting like the exact right amounts to get the body type that you want. And I'll never forget through actually my studies at Waterloo that the one thing that was mentioned to me was every eating disorder, like 100% of eating disorders start with a diet.
Yeah, just so scary.
Yeah, and so I've always been very hesitant to like participate in any kind of diet. And it's like I bought a scale. I have a scale that is on my, I think it's like on my counter right now that I've literally never used. I've owned it for a year. I've never used it. And I feel like the act of measuring food is crossing that line into a territory where I'm going to become obsessive about this, and it's going to start to become like a negative thing. Like that's where I lose like my freedom to live life in a way that I enjoy, is when I start scrutinizing my activities to such fine detail that I am reducing food to numbers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have sort of experience with that, but I can only imagine like also going through school at that time and having like the anxiety of school and succeeding, especially at Waterloo, where I'll never forget the president's speech, and I still disagree with it to this day. The first thing I ever heard in my first year there was look left, look right. One of those two people won't be here. Your 99% basically isn't good enough. Because you're going to learn what failure is here. And I'm just like, that is not a positive message to start the year off with.
Welcome. Good luck passing. Yeah, that's not the friendliest vibes.
Yeah, thanks for your 20 grand. We're gonna be happy to see you out the door, that kind of thing. But, could you possibly share a little bit about like what balancing those like anxieties and that stress is like? Because I literally cannot fathom trying to keep track of all that in my mind every single day.
Definitely. And I think like, so with the disordered eating, like that started in like my last year of high school. And so I think that like almost like the creating a system of how I was going to keep track of my food and track my calories and all of that was almost something that I had like practiced and put in place to such an extent that by the time I got to my undergrad, almost some of that like transition was gone, and it was almost normal at that point. And so I knew exactly what I had to eat to like meet like whatever like caloric expectations I'd set out for myself. But it meant that if those foods weren't available, or if something got in the way, or if my schedule changed, then there was like a great deal of anxiety there. And just like then that manifested in ways where like I would have like really like negative interactions with people in my life, or that I would just get like angry or frustrated, and that I didn't know to bring that back to the food, because I'd been telling myself this story this whole time that I was like doing the healthy thing and I was eating healthy food, and that was like good for me, so that couldn't be a problem. Which like now in retrospect I can see like was a lie I was telling myself, but at that time, because of the weird way that our society looks at food, I was put up on this pedestal of like, oh, like Ally doesn't eat sweets, or Ally doesn't, do these things, or like Ally doesn't accidentally eat a bag of chips or whatever. But because of that, then I felt like I had to carry around this like trophy of healthy eating, and that there was no space to question that.
Yeah.
And that I also didn't, like, I felt like I was going to disappoint people if I wasn't like the healthy person that everyone thought I was going to be. Which, yeah, created like a really weird way of looking at myself and looking at my habits. And so the way that kind of manifested, that I like 365 days a year, basically I had this like really structured way of eating, except for, well, 365 minus 12, not good at math. 12 days a year where I could like eat whatever I wanted, basically.
Okay.
Then those were always like, I would spend so much time and so much mental capacity thinking about what I was going to eat day to day, but then also like planning for these days when I could eat like whatever I wanted and eat sweets, and that created such like an unhealthy, like even more of an unhealthy relationship with food.
Yeah.
And that was really stressful. And then I put so much weight on those days where like I put so much like emphasis on those days, clarification, where if they weren't perfect or if something got in the way, then I would get really stressed out about it. And again, that would be something where I would be upset that other people hadn't like let that day be like exactly the way that I envisioned it. But that wasn't the point. Like food should be something that you enjoy for enjoying it with people, and because it tastes, not because it's either like good or bad. And yeah, it's been a process to get.
It honestly makes me wonder, because like our first interaction was at a place where you would typically eat and drink things, and I'm like I knew nothing about you at that point in time other than like, oh, this amazing person has reached out and wants to like invite me into this group. Like what a nice thing. But I like, what kind of pressure did that even put you under to be social and interact with people, and yet knowing that, you know, a lot of the time that took place at like a bar or somewhere that food that wasn't necessarily healthy would be served.
Yeah, I definitely developed an ability to like make excuses for not eating, or to like it was just so like I'm so used to being places and not eating food, and that's like so weird within our society. Like we should be able to go places and interact and sit down and like have a meal with people, but it was just like never worth it for the anxiety. And so it helped that I also don't drink. And so I think that was something, or that's something that I could always be like, oh, like I'm not gonna get anything to drink, and oh, like that's fine, like I already ate, or like or I would bring like snacks along with me sometimes, which that was also really weird. And
unless you're in a movie theater, in which case that's just the way you do things. It's way too expensive. Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely something where when I really wanted to interact with people and get to know people, like I would make myself go to those things. But also a lot of the time, if it was like with that, I think we got to go on as kind of like more of like an evening thing where we could have snacks. And with that, it was a lot easier to navigate not eating in those environments. So I could kind of like have reasons for it, and it wasn't as weird. But I definitely found myself a lot of the time, if it was like a meal that we were going out for, that I would like make reasons that I couldn't go, or would like meticulously scour menus to make sure that we were going somewhere that had something that I could eat that was gonna like comply with all of my expectations.
Yeah.
Ate a lot of very expensive salads because that's all that I felt like to eat. Yeah.
Why are salads so expensive? It does not make sense that salads can be $15. They cost nothing to make. That is the money maker right there. They're feeding off of the restaurant industry is feeding off people trying to be healthy with salads. That's a whole other story in itself, I'm sure. But like, I have very strong feelings about salads, and I refuse to buy them at restaurants because they are so easy to reproduce on your own time for so much less. I did have a sort of thought though, and it's escaping me right now, which is awkward. But oh yes, the one thing I was going to ask you is because in talking about this, like a lot of the time that people talk about sort of like eating disorders and things like that, you hear a lot about like the relationship they have with their physical appearance and what they see of themselves. And in your description of your eating disorder is actually a lot to deal with like the healthy food side of things, which is kind of an interesting perspective to me. So for you, was the eating disorder more about like a reaction to like a physical perception of self, or was it like a sort of like mental need to be healthy? Like I'll let you kind of describe and answer that.
Yeah, I think it manifests in like a lot of different ways. And like, I think that a lot of the time when people talk about eating disorders, or when that like is something that impacts people, that sometimes that can come from like a lack of control in people's lives and like wanting to like control something. And so I honestly, like I started struggling with this so long ago that I almost can't remember exactly what started it, but I was just getting out of a bad relationship that like didn't have me in a very good headspace. And so I think that kind of was like the tipping point where like I'm sure there were other factors there that like started me along the way. But then I also for a lot of my life have struggled with just like a impending fear of like getting some like chronic terminal illness. Which is the thing I'm working through. I'm like talking to the folks in therapy. I don't know why that's a thing that I am so afraid of, but it just like it was something that I told myself that if I ate healthy, then that wouldn't happen. And I know that that's not like now I can rationally look back and recognize that's not how that works. Mm-hmm. But I think that I was so afraid of that. And I said, like, from everything I would read, especially like going into like a scientific field, it said, eat these things, do these like healthy things. And that's what helps to prevent that from happening. And I was so afraid of that I was like, I have to do this perfect or that could happen. And then on top of that, then there's also like body image issues. And so all of those different pieces manifested together and really, a lot of layers.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear that it's such a complex thing because it sounds like a lot of the sort of root cause of things came from like a lack of control, stemming from like, the end of a relationship and just needing to like take some kind of power back over your life. And then, there's also the sort of more classic, I guess, body image things tied into that, which, is a strange thought for me. And I don't know where exactly you were at when I sort of met you with this, but I remember going and seeing like, I remember we went out and I met you and I came home and my roommate at the time was like, oh yeah, like you were gone a while, like it's pretty late, like what were you up to? And I was like, oh my God, this amazing person invited me out for like this dinner to meet people. And my roommate's name was John at the time. I was like, and John, like she was the most beautiful person. Like I've never seen someone who just lights up from like smiling so much. And she's like, oh, describe what she looks like. And like, I can only see her face because she's just such a, like a, I'm like, she just like smiled so much. Like, it's like nothing else mattered in the world. All your problems just melted away. And, he was like, wow, sounds like quite the girl there. And it's interesting that, at this point in time, I'm assuming you would have been sort of right in the middle of really struggling with all this. Yeah. And yet your presentation of self was so positive.
No, 100%. And I think that especially at that time, it had become so normalized in my life that it wasn't, I was able to like work through that I hadn't worked through it, but I was able to put on this like front of being very much A-okay and like there were no struggles going on, which I think like I'm grateful that I was able to do that and to function as a human and still build relationships. But I think also that I probably could have started working on this a lot sooner had it been more evident, because I remember like way back when it was first starting, a couple of friends had sat me down and they said like, hey, like we're worried about you. Because at like the very beginning, it was a lot worse where I was like trying to eat like just like 1,000 calories a day and stuff. And
I'm glad I don't count those. I'm probably at 10,000 a day.
Hey, you do you,
I love potatoes. I just love potatoes.
Delicious. They're the best thing. Mm-hmm. You can cook them in so many ways.
They're a versatile food that I could have for every meal, and I think I've really taken up that challenge. So, yeah, I agree.
I love that. That makes me happy. Yep. I would do that, but I feel like I have. Well, I just bought a lot of produce, so I probably shouldn't eat potatoes for every meal.
That's very fair.
Lots of broccoli. It's going to go bad in my fridge if I try that.
Hey, broccoli is an amazing food in itself. It's one of my favorites. I love it. And I will never hold broccoli eating against any person. It's a fantastic individual. Here's a fun fact randomly. This is just a random fact that has nothing to do with anything. So broccoli is, I think, one of, I'm going to get the number wrong. It's either 5 or like 7 different vegetables that come from the same plant.
Oh, that's
neat. Yeah, if I count them out, it probably makes sense. So broccoli, cauliflower, I think it's Brussels sprouts, cabbage, Another one that I can't pronounce, and it might be like an asparagus or something like that. No, kale. It's kale. All come from the wild mustard plant. They're just different parts of it that have been like cultivated specifically through farming, and they're literally the same food.
Interesting. Well, I'm glad that wild mustard existed at one point. That my life would be so sad if I did not have all of these different forms of wild mustard.
I mean, we could do without cauliflower because it's just like broccoli that's not achieved its destiny. But
cauliflower wings.
Yeah, I mean, those are good, I'm sure, because you've covered the cauliflower in something else that tastes much better. Yeah, right? Like,
fair enough.
Cauliflower wings are like the overdone makeup of the people crowd. It's like, oh, your face is entirely painted, and then what's underneath that? Oh, cauliflower. No wonder you were wearing so much makeup. Cauliflower.
Recently found balsamic Brussels sprouts, and they've made my life so much better. I love them deeply.
Brussels sprouts are amazing, but I digress. That was a bit of an aside to our conversation there. But hey, you know what? Fun facts we present here on the FlawedCast. You can learn things. But one of the things that sort of like comes to mind is like you mentioned that people had sat you down and they'd pointed out that they were concerned, and I'm kind of wondering, like, at what point, like, what was your thinking around that when someone brought it up to you? Is like, okay, this is a problem, and sort of at what point then did it become like, oh God, this is a problem for you?
Yeah, so I think that I had multiple moments along this journey where I kind of had like a this is a problem moment when they asked me about it, like way back when, grade 13. I
grade 13. You were a grade 13?
Wow. I was not mandated to do a grade 13. I wanted to take all of the science classes and do French immersion, and that meant grade 13. And I got to do the school play again. I loved very deeply.
Okay, so it was like grade 12 repeat though. It wasn't like grade 13 proper.
It was like grade 13 because I loved high school a lot and thought I never wanted to leave. And then I did my undergrad and I thought, hey, this was even better. I don't ever want to leave. And I did 6 years of that. So,
I think that's, you had what, like 37 minors, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. 37 of them.
Here's a fun fact. I also fun facts all around today. I also did a grade 12 repeat, but I was smart. I planned ahead the year before and I kept all of my assignments. And then I just retook the same classes and then made the corrections on my own assignments and handed them in. And that, people, is what gets you scholarships.
That's nice.
You don't have to try. You just put in an extra year and make the corrections that are right there for you.
That's smart.
Yeah. That's a life hack. Life
hack. I did not take that approach, but that sounds like a good life hack.
Oh, it super is. It's very, I don't know if you get away with it now. Like, I feel like that I was probably that one person that ruined it for everyone. They're like, okay, you're going to do this, but never again will we allow someone to do this.
You're going to start putting it through like the did you plagiarize yourself scanner thing.
Well, that was there. I think, I came from a small town too. They were just like, just graduate and go. Yeah. Like, honestly, if it helps you, like, get out of here, kid.
Onward.
Yeah. Sorry. So you were saying there, like, that there was multiple instances where, this kind of arose as a problem in your mind. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So like with that, like, initial conversation, I completely denied that it was something that was an issue. I don't know if it was so much denial as me just like not recognizing it though. Like, I think that I just thought it was normal. And like that was around the time when I was trying to like eat like literally just 1,000 calories a day, and I was also working on a goat farm, which when you do farming things, your body needs energy. So
yeah, absolutely. And goats are energetic.
They are quite energetic and adorable, but take much of my energy.
Random fact: my first 2 pets that I ever bought for myself were 2 goats.
Goats are lovely. Yeah. Those are good pet choices.
Yeah, they're the only animal that eats poison ivy. So I took them around the farm with me while I was painting fences, and they would eat the poison ivy, and I would paint the fence.
That's very strategic. I love that.
I am tactical.
I know about your grade 13 strategies. I know about your goat strategies.
Yeah.
No, I guess like the next time that it kind of came up as an issue is like I remember there was one day I was visiting my grandparents, and this was when I was still like eating very little, and I remember feeling like I was going to pass out, and I was like no, I actually keep eating just like the specific number of calories, and I just felt so like unwell that I went and I remember like grabbing an apple from their fridge and saying like, hey, Ally, you can keep following some kind of structure here, but like something's got to give, because like you're not going to be okay
Yeah.
if you keep on with just that. And at that point, I think it shuffled from like what could have probably turned into anorexia into like more of like I don't know how exactly scientific it is or proven it is, but like into more of like an orthorexia kind of a thing.
That is not a term I'm familiar with. Could you give me a little background on that one?
So my understanding of that is when it's like when folks are like very invested in eating like what's like strictly like healthy, but
Okay.
your mind kind of defines what healthy looks like, and it's not necessarily based on a lot of science. Like I think how it kind of manifests for like some people is that like they designate in their heads like this is an okay food and this is not an okay
Yeah.
food, but it doesn't always make a lot of sense. Like for example, like I was like, for like a lot of time, like I was like, I can eat like yogurt and I can eat cottage cheese, but I was like, but peanut butter is like a bad food. Like I cannot eat this. And like, regardless of the fact that, like peanut butter, like has healthy fat, or I guess like avocados were okay to eat, but peanut butter
Yeah.
wasn't. Both of them, I think, bring like healthy fats and like probably similar benefits to the body, but like I demonized one and one was okay, and that was just kind of like how, yeah, that was.
There is a lot of sugar in peanut butter if you get like the classic Kraft kind of peanut butter. I learned that. I learned
Oh
that
no,
recently this year where I was like, because I love peanut butter.
it's
It's the
delicious.
only I'm gonna air quote nut I can eat, because it's the only reason I can eat it is it's not actually a nut. Um, Legumes, people. But the thing is, like, I love peanut butter. Oh, it's
Mhm.
so good, and I would eat it all the time. And I'm just like, yeah, this is so healthy for me. And then I looked at the sugar content, and I was like, I love it because it's addictive, and I'm eating sugar. And since then, I have made the switch to organic peanut butter, which I thought was gross. But it turns out if you mix it up, it's not so bad. You just gotta, the oil separates a bit and things like that. But it's interesting how that can happen. And like I'm on the other side of the fence where like avocados and I don't get along. I know they're health foods. I know they're good for you, but there are
Mm,
just specific foods that I seem to have some kind of an intolerance to, and avocado legitimately makes me physically ill.
that's so
And
sad.
like I love guacamole, and I ate it for on burritos. I had a bit of a burrito addiction for about a month. I ate 30 days in a row at Burrito Boys. But
Still
I didn't
challenge or it just happened?
I didn't even change my order. I just loved them so much. But I would get guac on them, and every single day I'd eat this burrito, and I'd be like, "Oh, it was so good." And then like half an hour later, it's like I am dying, and
Oh,
clearly didn't learn from that because I kept going back. But it took me a while to figure out until like I had a relationship with someone who again liked to eat healthy, and she's like, um, "Have some avocado," and I ate the avocado straight, and I was like, "Oh my god, oh, this is the problem." Yeah.
geez.
So, it's like I too have had a bit of a tough journey with food just because I seem to have like allergies and intolerances to the things that would make me healthy. I had some people be like, "You should go." And again, you try and avoid diets, but
Yeah.
my friends seem to know the way to convince me to do anything is to tell me I can't do it.
Oh
So,
no.
somebody literally challenged me to do the ketogenic diet,
Mm,
and I was like, whatever, I can do the ketogenic diet for 30 days, no problem, and I'm going to celebrate at the end of it by eating like 16 pizzas. But, I was like, okay, yeah, we'll do this ketogenic diet. And a huge part of that was having like, nut and kind of seed proteins, of which I could eat none.
mm.
So my day was like eating like sausages and like all of this other like meat protein and stuff. And I actually don't think I've recovered from it fully because I ended up like legitimately ending up with high blood pressure as a result of eating like this for 30 days, where like my blood pressure went from normal to like at risk and then into the high thing. And I went to a doctor, and he's like, He's like, do you smoke? I'm like, no. He's like, do you drink coffee? He's like, never. Like, I've never done either of those things.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't understand. He's like, do you go to the gym regularly? Like every day, 2 hours a day. He's like, this is unreasonable. And it wasn't until like a month later that it kind of came down. But like, I was like, holy crap. Like, imagine, like, I did that for 30 days where I was eating something that wasn't arguably good for me. And it wasn't even that terrible. Like, I was actually having, like, they weren't even frozen sausages. They were like fresh sausages and eggs and, like, you know, things that I cooked myself. But, you know, I can only imagine living with, you know, having a strict diet like that and the effects it would have on your body after an extended period of time where you're basically denying yourself like the things that you kind of need to live.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think like I think a lot now about how much I like deprive my body of healthy fats and like how much that probably like that stuff is so important for your brain development and just like brain health in general, and that I was doing that to myself at such a formative time in my life, and then also a time when I was expecting so much cognitively of my brain that I don't know exactly how that worked or how I managed it all, because it like I don't know that it should have worked out in a way where like I was able to, not that I know a ton about brain science or health, but yeah, I just like I feel very fortunate that I was able to do my undergrad and be okay through all of that.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I was not doing the things that my body needed at that time.
You know, it's interesting, like the information that we get surrounding things like healthy fats and stuff, and even like, you know, what our food guide suggests that you eat and how that caters to like, you know, corporations and what they basically want us to eat. So they position it in a way where it's like, you need this because, you know, I love watching documentaries. I consider myself a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
And whether that results in me having a degree or certification of some kind is questionable at best. But like I'm always engaging in new learning. And I watched a documentary recently that was like covering like the I guess misconceptions around like fats and things that have been created by like the food industry. And, you know, talking about how people like we look at it from our perspective where it's like these are the regular things that we eat. And this is our little bubble that we live in, and this is what's normal, and that's just what you eat to be healthy. But there are people in the world who like if you look at like the indigenous people in northern Canada, they don't have the climate for growing vegetables and things. They've survived for forever off of like essentially like really fatty meats like fish, seal, like that kind of stuff, where they're essentially just getting like these fat, like, you know, enriched proteins from animal meat all the time. And they're eating what is like primarily like a carnivorous diet, and they are not suffering negative side effects from that. They're living healthy and well, and, you know, they're active. And, you know, it says a lot about like what we think we need to be doing and what we've been told, and then just sort of like contrast that with like what is a wholly healthy lifestyle that you can live. Like, is it what you eat? Is it including a little bit of exercise in that, or like making sure your body's moving? And then like there's also the mental health aspect, which is like I don't think people consider health often enough as like a holistic thing, where like if you're missing one of these sort of, I always want to say quadrants, but I can only ever come up with three things, and you know that doesn't work. So let's call it pie pieces.
Yeah.
That you know really affects you, because like if your mental health is suffering, that's going to affect your physical health. That's going to affect like your emotional health. And I don't think we have the right information to navigate those situations a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering like when you like where like I'm struggling for the word here. You know, you're making these healthy life decisions in your mind, right? And and the other people are like arguing this debatably, but you're saying to yourself like this is what the healthy thing is.
Yeah.
Where's that information coming from you? Like, what are you basing those decisions off of?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it was like, especially at that time, like I had access to a lot of like magazines that had like healthy lifestyle things and like a lot of like the narratives that we are told through the media. And I think that a lot of it was based off of things that I kind of saw there, in being able to see kind of like what I wanted to achieve in that, and thinking like, hey, like kind of like the classic, like, hey, like if X, then like I'll like achieve this, or like, this is the right way to do things, or this is like what's considered healthy. And that was like a big influence at that time for sure.
Yeah. Is there like, now you've obviously made it through this in some way, like I assume, where are you at now with this kind of journey of yours, and how did you kind of like get out of that, I guess what we'll call like the crisis point?
Yeah. Like it was definitely was slash like is an ongoing journey for sure. Like by no means would I say like right now in this moment that like everything's peachy keen. Like it's substantially better for sure, but that it's something that I don't think that like I don't know if there'll be any point in my life where like I won't have like thoughts of like worry of food. It like to some extent. But I think that with that, like I kind of towards like the later parts of my undergrad, I started paying more attention to kind of like I would like to like the games that I was playing with myself in terms of like especially those like the 12 days a year where I was able to eat whatever I wanted, like that I'd mentioned earlier. And I was like playing mental games where I was like, oh well, you know, if I like split this in half, or like if I like move these around, and it reached a point where I thought like, hey, like if I'm doing all of this, why don't I just eat foods that I enjoy sometimes? And like that was something where like I like made the conscious decision that I was going to stop giving myself designated days, and that I was going to try to just like push myself outside of that. And I think like that being said, like I also recognize how fortunate I am, because I think that for a lot of people, like it's not something that they can necessarily get to of their own accord. Like I think that it is something that's very, very challenging to move past. And so that was very lucky, I think, that I was able to kind of catch that, or that I had some self-awareness in that space. And yeah, I can't even like, I just feel very fortunate that it did work out that way, that I was able to do that. And from there, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say, did you find a lot of that, like the progress that you were making was like internal motivation, or were you getting like external supports, or, you know, what was sort of helping you make that change, I guess?
Yeah, well, I think that I like something that was really, I think, impactful, and that was the fact that I was like, again, in a relationship at that time in my life, and I saw how much my behavior was like impacting negatively that relationship, where I was like prioritizing food over that person, or over just kind of like doing normal things with them or with their family, and that was weird. And I like questioned that of myself, and I thought like, why is this something that's so important that I'm going to let it bleed into these other parts of my life and hurt these parts of my life? And that was kind of a rude awakening, where like that, like the relationship like didn't end up being something that like successfully continued. And there were other factors at play there, but I think that because of how wrapped up I was in that eating at that time, that it definitely had a negative impact there. And so that's kind of like a tipping point where I started trying to make more intentional steps. And that like from there, I definitely like it wasn't 100% back to normal. And that it kind of swung, like the pendulum swung a little bit the other way, where I was a lot more flexible with my eating, but then like that, like it led to like some times where like I would like eat pretty normal, but then I was very much in a mentality when like if I ate like quote unquote like bad foods, that like then I was like, oh, I've messed up for today, and it would lead to like binging. And then there was a lot of like guilt associated with that. And that was something that I struggled with for like probably a couple of years, and that only like I'd say like fairly recently, like within like probably like the last year or so, that like that's been something where I've been able to like stop that behavior. And like that being said, like I feel like even at this time, like I can't guarantee that I won't ever go back to that, but that's kind of like where, like I've kind of reached a point now where it's like not as something I struggle with as much on a day to day.
Yeah, well, there's always, there's always the possibility, right? And I think that a lot of the times, like when we struggle with these things, it's the challenge is learning how to like attend to those thoughts and feelings in our mind and learn to like sit back and just kind of observe them and where they're coming from, but not necessarily like feed energy into them, right? Mm-hmm. And I know as well as anyone that can be difficult from time to time. There are days where I just legitimately don't understand my actions. And I'm just like, I don't know why I got to the point that I did. And you look back on it and you're like, wow, that was a lot to deal with. But I think there's a lot to be said about being able to like also forgive ourselves in those moments and just say like, hey, just because that was then doesn't mean it's a forever thing. Like it doesn't mean this is who I am. It's a thing that happened. It's in the past now, and we're here in the present, and it's not currently a thing, right?
Yeah. It's super hard to develop that like self-compassion to be able to do that. Like that's
incredibly hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely been a learning process for me, and like I'm thankful for all the time that I've had recently to spend with myself, because it's given me a lot of time to like, think about the things that are important to me and, who I am as a person. Whereas I think like day to day, we get so busy and caught up in our regular lives and the things that like we need to do, and all these external influences on our like, we have to go to work. We're dealing with like a shitty traffic commute kind of thing. We've got to take phone calls, and when I come home, I've got to cook food for myself and potentially someone else, or maybe you've got like kids in the mix, and there's all these things that are just like pressure. And at the end of the day, you just like, as you say, like, there's a bit of a control aspect there. You just want something to be in your control, and you want to be able to feel good as well. So it's not uncommon for us to be, I don't even think it's unreasonable for expect people to be, a bit selfish and, desiring that control in their lives when there's just so much happening that is kind of crappy around us. Mm-hmm. And it's funny right now because I think there's so many people that are realizing like, you know what, this kind of sucks that we're in like an isolation thing due to this pandemic, and like our lives have changed. But I think people in general are just generally kind of happier to be at home and able to manage their own schedule and, be given the opportunity to still accomplish like meaningful work and things, but like in the way that they like in a self-directed kind of way where they're not being like micromanaged and told what to do, and the stresses of commutes and things are taken off. And I think that ultimately like it's going to be really hard to go back to normal from here for people. Like I know myself, I sit here and I'm like, if I have to go back to the office 5 days a week for 8 hours a day, I like literally cannot imagine doing that, because I feel like I'm more accomplished than ever now that I've been given a little bit of control over my life, which I think is like a predominant theme in like what you're saying here is like we fall into these habits when we start to feel out of control. And so much of life now is not under our control. So much of it is like us being told what to do. And like a lot of the time, it's just like, bite the bullet, suck it up, and move on because this is happening. And like that isn't healthy for people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally imagine how you'd get to that point with all of this like expectation and things. And sometimes like I like to imagine myself, and this is kind of a thought I had earlier today where I've been undergoing like this sort of like spiritual exploration, I'll call it, just because religion's never really sat well with me, and I've always had my own thoughts and beliefs, and I really like to question things. So, coming to my own conclusions about like, life and the nature of existence and things like that is something that I'm happy to do on my own. Like it's a journey. But I participate in this sort of like online forum kind of thing for people who are just undergoing like, it's called like a spiritual awakening or something. And I don't know if the terminology really suits me, but, and part of it is like someone was just like you just see so many people that are out there like looking for someone to provide meaning to every situation. They're like, oh, I keep seeing repeating patterns of numbers. Like, what does it mean? Or like like analyze my dreams. Like, does this mean like I've got like a call to something? Or like, like I had this amazing like experience, and they use all this terminology like downloading and like, okay, whatever. Like I don't, you're not telling me anything about yourself. You're not really showing me that you've gained anything from this. You're showing me that you know how to blindly accept like the guidance of other people. And like the one piece of advice I gave someone on there was because they were really struggling with their own identity and things. And like, this is a 14-year-old kid. It's a 14-year-old. And he's like, I'm having this moment of like awakening. I'm like, you're 10 years from your brain being fully developed. Like every moment of your life is you awakening. Like it's not you don't like melt down your head over it, and don't like, he's like, I'm a flat worlder and all of this stuff. And I'm like, okay, like even if that's what you believe, and I like flat, oh my God, the flat world. Like, well, I'm just going to avoid it. But like, even if that's what you believe, like maintain an open mind to different perspectives. There's this, I said to him, I was like, what I like to do when I want to get sort of in touch with myself is like, every day we're affected by all of these external influences and all these people that are telling us what to do and the right thing to do. And like, this is the solution to your problems. And here's the easy way out. And, for $9.99, you could buy your way out of problems forever, kind of thing. And all you have to do is follow my 3 simple steps. And like, so what I said to him was like, this is what I like to do. I like to imagine myself like if it was just me living out in the woods, and I never had seen other people and had no other influence. At the core of my being, who would I then be? Because like there's days where I can't say I've gone into like a body dysmorphic kind of like situation, or thought of it in such a way that like I absolutely needed to like obsessively change like my body image. But I've been not happy with my body image for a lot of time. And like I was just a skinny kid growing up, and I was like, I wanted to be like bigger, and I thought people would like me more and whatever, teenager stuff. But the thing is, like, I thought to myself, I was like, what if I just didn't own a mirror? I would never have these considerations in my life if I wasn't constantly confronted with imagery of myself. And there was a while where I actually just had an experiment where I just got rid of my mirrors.
Oh, geez.
And I literally just never saw myself. I had no idea what I looked like. And I like grew an amazing beard in this time, and like had like long hair. And, I would just for the sake of it would go to like a barber and get them to like clean me up a bit so I didn't look like Chewbacca. But it was amazing the difference that made, is just not having to constantly be confronted with myself and like scrutinize every inch of me and like cast judgment on myself. It's like, if this is how I lived in nature, like there wouldn't be mirrors in nature. I would just roam around and be perfectly content with my body, because I'd have no like concept of what I even necessarily looked like. I would base my happiness solely on my ability to perform in a day. Where it's like, this body is serving me well. I have food and I can run from predators. Or maybe I am maybe I'm like catching a rabbit, and I'm, I can catch a rabbit, that kind of thing.
Situation, really.
Yeah. But I like it just, I feel like I've been monologuing there for a while, but it's just this thing that came to me today. I was like, why do we surround ourselves with all of these opportunities to cast judgment on ourselves, And like, how is that affecting our mental health?
It's definitely not helping it at all. And that's definitely been something that I've been trying to be a lot more mindful of lately, is when I'm having those moments or those days where I am being more judgmental of myself, or kind of like looking down on things, and trying to really reframe that and thinking like, especially like I've within like the past couple of years gotten really into like rock climbing, and that's something like I love climbing, I love running, and like all of these things. I can only do those things because I have muscle, and I have like I like because I've fed my body enough that I've been able to do that, and that me aspiring to look a certain way would probably take away my ability to do those things to like the extent that I want to, and they bring me so much joy now that I can't imagine that, and that I need to like that's something that I'm really trying to work on is reframing that and seeing the positives in what I can do as opposed to like the deficits or the ways that like maybe like it's not like quote unquote perfect or whatever I envision that looking like.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because like, you know, the um I want like weight is an interesting like thing to think about because a lot of people view like more weight as being like a bad thing kind of thing. And I even had a conversation with my mother this week where I told her like I'm legitimately the heaviest I've ever been kind of thing. I was like, you know, like, hey mom, oh, okay, well that's a lie. I'm almost as heavy as I've ever been. I'm not quite at the peak, but I was like 205 pounds last week. And I told my mother that, and she's like 205 pounds. You don't look 205 pounds. Like, there's no way you're 205 pounds. I'm like, but you know what? Like, weight isn't necessarily a bad thing. I was like, I used to be terrified of being like over 185 because I thought that was like I'm eating like terribly and I'm getting fat or whatever. And like, okay, 200 pounds is not fat, Jay. Like, calm down. But you know, that was a thing where I was like afraid of that weight. And then once I started getting into fitness and working out and actually like practicing like healthy routines, I was like, weight is a good thing. Like, if I can look like this and be 210 pounds, like I have an amazing amount of like muscle on my body that is just like fantastic. And I think there's a lot of like, you know, misconceptions around like things like weight and, you know, body image in general, where it's like, you know, we base things off of like body mass index, which is like notoriously terrible for thinking about how fit and well you are. And, you know, like just your weight in general, like, no, there's like good weight that you can have. And like rock climbers are like some of the fittest people out there. Like you look at a rock climber, like climbing and you just see like the muscles on them and you're like, wow, like that is impressive. Like I don't even understand how you develop that finger strength. Like it's
time and lots of practice.
I mean, I don't know if my fingers work well enough to practice anymore because I've like snapped about 4 of them at this point. But you know, it's just so strange how one thing in like one person's eyes can be such a negative, and in another person's eyes can be so positive, right? Mm. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess one of the things that we've talked a lot about, like your journey in this, and that you're still not necessarily at a place of like 100% like this is solved. And I honestly think like most of our problems in life are never 100% solved. Like you can be a millionaire one day and like everything goes to shit, and then next thing your money doesn't mean anything because the economy has collapsed. And you know, so there's always the potential for problems, which is present. And I guess like what I'd like to sort of end on here is like how do you feel like you manage that day to day and just like become sort of okay with that?
Yeah. I think that like it's definitely something that I need to like grapple with on a day to day. But that I really am trying to, as much as possible, like be like grateful for where I am. And when those like moments do come up, that I really focus on framing it as like, you know what, like this is something that's like happening in this moment, but this is not forever. Like this is not like just because this thing happened, that does not, it doesn't define you as who you are. And that like it's okay. Like humans don't have to be perfect, and that it's okay to make mistakes, and that like every day you're just learning and growing and continuing to become more of the future human that you're going to be. And that's like provides me some comfort. Not that it's always 100% a-okay all of the time, but that definitely helps. And just just a willingness to continue kind of looking for the next day and the next chance to learn there and everything. That's
and I think that's an incredibly sort of positive outlook on things. Like, you know, there's going to be potholes along the way, and it's just about, you know, fixing the problem and then moving on and making it better for the next time you pass through the area, right? And I'm going to continue with this pothole analogy here, but even when you fill in a pothole, you can still see it every time you drive past. But it's a reminder that's there to
Yeah.
serve you, that like you learned from it once and you overcame it once and you can do it again.
Yeah.
And I think with that, like I just wanted to thank you so much for coming out and sharing your experience. Obviously, it's a lot to go through, and like that, it's not an easy journey. And from, the sounds of it, you're probably 10 to 15 years into this, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah,
I'm doing
so
my full damn. Oh gosh, no, I'm just kidding.
yeah, but like the positive news is like you can be 10 to 15 years into this and your life can still be progressing, and it's not like a crippling thing that has to like consume you. Like you've found ways to work through it and people to support you, and your own sort of like self-motivation and power through that. And I think that's a very powerful message. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I just wanted to say, like, I do appreciate you coming out on the FlawedCast and being vulnerable and sharing those experiences. And I hope that people can really learn from this.
Thank you so much, Jay. It was lovely. I'm glad we had a chance to chat about it.
Absolutely. And with that, I think I'll end today's podcast, and hopefully everyone else who might be listening has enjoyed learning from the wonderful Ally Jewell. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll see you again next time.